378 days. That's what stands between today and Kenya's next general election on August 10th, 2027. Linda Mwananchi leaders have vowed to break away from ODM. The United Alternative Government still hasn't picked a flag bearer. Calls for opposition to front one candidate, and Kenya Kwanza seeks a pre-election with ODM. It feels somewhat chaotic, right? But this isn't new. This is the likely move in Kenyan politics. When you can't win an election, you build a coalition. The question is always the same. Who joins, who leads, and how long before it falls apart? Because if history tells us anything, coalitions are built to win elections, they often succeed, and then many struggle to survive the victory. 1991 ushered in the return of multi-party politics after years of a single-party rule.
Tuondoe ile section ya katiba ya Kenya ya 2A.
And by 1992, 12 political parties had been registered. At this point, we had several opposition candidates running against KANU. Sounds like strength in numbers, right? It wasn't. The opposition vote was so split that President Daniel Moi effortlessly retained power, garnering about 38% of the vote. Fast forward to 1997, 5 years later, Moi won the presidency again with roughly 40% of the vote. KANU remained the dominant party. So the opposition had the numbers, but not a single voice. And that fragmentation cost the opposition the election. It took 2 successive elections spanning a decade of multi-party politics before opposition parties decided on serious coalition negotiations. By 2002, there were 2 alliance-building efforts: the merger between KANU and Raila Odinga's National Development Party, and the other brought together Mwai Kibaki's Democratic Party, Ford Kenya, and the National Party of Kenya. But everything changed for the KANU-LDP merger when Moi endorsed Uhuru Kenyatta as his preferred successor. Senior leaders including Raila, George Saitoti, Kalonzo felt sidelined. Raila led a massive walkout from KANU together with the likes of Saitoti and Kalonzo, and they formed the Rainbow Alliance. That alliance then joined Kibaki, Wamalwa, and Charity Ngilu's National Alliance of Kenya. But the script flipped when Moi handpicked Uhuru as his heir. The other senior leaders, Raila, Saitoti, Kalonzo, walked out in protest, forming the Rainbow Alliance. This merged with Kibaki, Wamalwa, and Charity Ngilu's National Alliance of Kenya, thus forming National Rainbow Coalition, NARC. One coalition, one candidate, and one purpose, ending KANU's 42-year hold on power. The alliance was formed just months before the 2002 election. NARC won that election, and Mwai Kibaki became president with more than 60% of the votes, ending KANU's long hold on power.
Mimi Mwai Kibaki naapa kwamba nitakuwa mwaminifu wa Jamhuri ya Kenya na kuitumikia kwa moyo wangu wote.
But the NARC reign was a lesson in coalition politics by itself. Winning together is easy, governing together is where it breaks. Allegations of betrayal rocked the coalition. Disagreements centered on the promise of a new constitution, a proposed prime minister position, and an allegedly violated power-sharing MOU. Within 3 years, NARC split. The 2005 constitutional referendum turned those disagreements into 2 rival camps. Orange and Banana. The Orange camp, led by Raila, opposed the Wako draft constitution. The Banana camp, led by Kibaki, supported it. So the Orange side won the referendum, a political momentum that birthed the Orange Democratic Movement, ODM. Later on, the Kibaki side formed the Party of National Unity, PNU, which was unveiled in September 2007, only 3 months before the general election. But back to the Orange side. Right after winning the referendum, differences emerged over the ownership of the Orange Democratic Movement Party and the Orange Democratic Movement Kenya Party, ODM Kenya, which were referred to as the famous 2 certificates. A power struggle emerged between Raila and Kalonzo over the ownership of the party. So when the team attempted to register the ODM party, they discovered it had already been registered by lawyer Mugambi Imanyara. Amidst the confusion, Kalonzo's allies secured the certificate for the likely alternative, ODM Kenya, momentarily leaving Raila partyless. Ultimately, Imanyara agreed to transfer the original ODM party to Raila. Sounds familiar, right? A single movement breaking into competing factions, each claiming the true mantle. That's Linda Mwananchi and ODM's leadership today, just in a different decade. 2007 showed what happens when coalition disputes aren't resolved before the election day. Kenya's 4th general election was held on December 27th, 2007, where Mwai Kibaki got approximately 4.58 million votes, while Raila received approximately 4.35 million votes. Violence erupted thereafter, claiming the lives of more than 1,000 people and hundreds of thousands displaced. This forced negotiations, led by former UN Secretary General Kofi Annan, and the Grand Coalition Government was formed, a power-sharing deal between PNU and ODM. So this deal restored stability and later oversaw the passage of the 2010 Constitution. It is also the clearest warning in Kenya's coalition history that unresolved coalition math can have a human cost. The Political Parties Act of 2011 formally recognized coalition agreements and established timelines for coalition formation. But the politics remained familiar. In 2013, Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto merged the National Alliance Party, TNA, and the United Republican Party, URP, into the Jubilee Alliance. An alliance availed barely 2 months before the general election. Initially, Musalia Mudavadi was part of discussions around a broader alliance involving Uhuru and Ruto as a compromise candidate. But this was not to be. Mudavadi then formed the Amani coalition with UDF, KANU, and New Ford Kenya only 2 weeks before the election. Wiper's Kalonzo joined Raila and Moses Wetangula to form CORD, the Coalition for Reforms and Democracy, exactly 3 months before the 2013 elections. Kenyatta won the 2013 election against Raila. By 2017, Jubilee transformed itself from a coalition into a single political party. 7 months to the election, the opposition side formed NASA, the National Super Alliance, a coalition of ODM, Wiper, ANC, and Ford Kenya under Raila, Kalonzo, Musalia, and Wetangula, and their objective to unite to defeat Uhuru. However, the Jubilee Party won the election, which was nullified by the Supreme Court, a first in Africa, before a repeat election, and then eventually a handshake between Uhuru and Raila in 2018. In 2022, Kenya Kwanza Alliance and Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Coalition emerged. So Kenya Kwanza had about 15 parties, including UDA, ANC, and Ford Kenya under William Ruto. Azimio hosted over 20 parties, including ODM, Jubilee, Wiper, and NARC Kenya behind Raila. Both coalitions had agreements deposited with the Registrar of Political Parties in April 2022, roughly 4 months before the election. William Ruto won the election, one of the closest contests in history. After his victory, Ruto embarked on a charm offensive, winning over some Azimio-allied parties, neutralizing opposition strength in parliament. Once again, coalition discussions are dominating this political space less than 13 months to the elections. ODM dalliance with the Kenya Kwanza government has fractured the Raila party and forced some of its key members out. The likes of Edwin Sifuna, Godfrey Osotsi, Babu Owino, and James Orengo, though still in ODM, are leaning towards Linda Mwananchi. Separately, the United Alternative Government is coalescing around Kalonzo, Gachagua, and Karua with calls for a united opposition. The new kid on the block, Linda Mwananchi movement, led by Sifuna, Babu Owino, and Orengo, have also hinted at opposition unity. History shows this is the template of coalition formation in Kenya. First public declarations, then negotiations, disagreements, and eventually our coalition is born. Sounds like NARC before 2002 or ODM Kenya before 2007. Kenya has been running versions of this political script since 1992. Every successful coalition shared two things: a candidate everyone could rally behind and an agreement reached early enough to survive an election. And then the hardest part: surviving the victory. With 378 days remaining, we wait to see whether this cycle ends in a unified front or another fractured alliance. But the stakes have never been bigger. This is Politically Connected. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more explainers on Kenya's political landscape. Stay Politikali!